Now, tensions and terror in Gaza continue to shock the world, with news of more civilian casualties and the destruction of more landmarks, including the bombing of a tower which housed two international media outlets last night. World leaders are watching closely and are calling for calm in order to de-escalate the situation. But to find out just what's going on in the region, I'm joined now by Zina Rakhamilova, and she joins me from Tel Aviv. Zina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm mistaken. You were in Tel Aviv, I understand. That's where you call home. But where are you now, and are you safe?
I'm actually back in Tel Aviv. I needed to come back from Netanya. I spent the weekend in Netanya because I wanted to have easier access to a bomb shelter, and we've had less sirens just north of Tel Aviv. But from Netanya over the weekend, I was hearing explosions. I was hearing explosions from like the rocket fire and the Iron Dome interceptions that were happening in the city center. Unfortunately, one of the rockets hit a city nearby Tel Aviv called Ramat Gan, and unfortunately, a man passed away from that. But I ended up having to come back here to pick up a bunch of additional things for myself before we start the holiday in Israel called Shavuot. And unfortunately, overnight, there was more rocket fires. So all of us Tel Avivians were forced to run back into either our staircases or bomb shelters.
Wow, it's just fascinating. And I think we've seen last night, we saw the Israeli Defense Forces tweet out basically saying some of these attacks have been, they were well broadcast and people were told to get out in time. It's just a fascinating situation to watch unfold. But is this just going to show that social media is basically helping the rest of the world just see the scenes over there? Or is what we're seeing on social media not exactly indicative of the truth and the reality of the situation?
Listen, as a individual who runs a social media company that is what's called Socialite Creative, and me and my staff work with a bunch of nonprofits and government ministries to try to put out the information as much as possible. I think social media is very important because individuals, it's the first time that citizens, both Israelis and Palestinians, get to shed light on the story. And it's not just media outlets that are either reporting either misinformation or, are just showing what the headlines show. Palestinians and Israelis, we're real people, and we're actually, going through this conflict. This is a war zone. I'm sitting in Netanya yesterday, by my friend's pool, hearing explosions that are happening 20 minutes away. And so the fact that, on my Instagram or on my Facebook or Twitter, I'm able to, show what I'm going through, and my friends are able to go live and show what they're going through. It's, the first time that people all over the world have access to, me and my story and my friends' story about what we're going through here. So I think social media, as much as it, also, it's very ironic because, 1 second I'm videoing that I'm in the staircase running for cover, and the next I'm showing funny things that are happening. We deal with the way that we deal with the anxiety here is usually through humor, and while social media can exacerbate the situation, it's also a very powerful tool for the first time where we get to dictate what the narrative is.
Yeah. It's been absolutely fascinating just to see this sort of unfold and seeing civilians sort of lean into journalism in real time. It's been extraordinary. And some of that extraordinary vision is obviously from Netanya yesterday with the mayor down there, Miriam Fairberger-Kattar, quelling a fight between Arab Israelis and Israeli Jews. Is there a lot of that going on with locals calling for calm at what appears to be ground zero?
Of course. Listen, I've said it before that, I have Arab Israeli friends who are just as appalled and distressed about the violence going on as much as I am. And so the extremists make a lot of noise. They like to, they like to really make these headlines, but the reality is that it's just not true. The majority of Arabs and Jews here live side by side and are calling for peace and calm. And, unfortunately, we had to hear of a bunch of different like fatal lynchings that happened here with the very beginning of the riots, both as both Jews and Arabs, and that was very traumatic and distressing. But at the same time, I saw like beautiful stories of, a religious man who was about to be lynched that was saved by an Arab. So these extremists cannot be the ones to dictate what is the day to day here, which is that Arabs and Jews live side by side. It doesn't mean that we don't have our issues. It doesn't mean that, I believe that, there's more room to grow in how Israel, makes room for its minorities here, but it's not this terrible, horrible situation that a lot of media outlets are making it out to be.
Yeah, indeed. Yesterday, Zina, down here in Australia, thousands marched in a pro-Palestinian rally. How do you think that will be interpreted, not only by the armed forces and governments over there, but also like yourself, like civilians?
Listen, it's very distressing because I know that a lot of people are emotionally tied to this conflict, but a lot of the people that are at these protests, and I'm originally from Toronto, so I've seen these people. I've been somewhere that's outside of Israel and Palestine, and I see people who have been part of these rallies, and most of them have never been to the Middle East. Most of them have no idea what's going on here or the details. They're just people that want to make a lot of noise, and it's sad because I'm not anti-Palestinian. I support the Palestinians, and I completely acknowledge that they're suffering through this conflict just as much as I am. And so rather than be anti one side or pro one side versus the other, we should be having peace rallies. Like, we are the people. We're not the governments. We are the people that should be standing together and calling for an end to this violence. And so it's upsetting to me that individuals who will never walk in my shoes only care about, defaming me and my community and my people. And it's disappointing, but it is what it is. People have a right to protest. And in Israel, there was a protest, pro-Palestinian protest in Jaffa the other day. And that's what Israel is we're a democracy. People are allowed to protest. They can protest our government. And it's one of the only countries in the Middle East where you can protest the government. People have done it all the time. So
yeah,
that's my response to that.
It's a fascinating situation. It's a fascinating situation. Zina Rakhamilova, I'm so glad that you are safe. Thank you for joining us from Tel Aviv. Give our best to you and your loved ones, and just take care.
Thank you.